My name is Joseph Carter, and I have spent the last 4 years of my life proving myself to people who never intended to see me. I am 32 years old, a senior data analyst at Whitmore and Grayson Financial Group, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in Chicago. I hold 2 degrees, one in economics from Northwestern and an MBA from the University of Chicago. I have certifications in project management, financial modeling, and data architecture. I have delivered results that saved this company millions. And yet, when people look at me, they see something else first. They see a black man in a space they believe was never meant for him. It was a Tuesday morning when everything began to shift. The quarterly leadership meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and I had been preparing my presentation for 3 weeks. My analysis had uncovered a significant flaw in our risk assessment model, one that could expose the firm to massive liability if left uncorrected. I had documented everything meticulously: charts, projections, solutions. I was ready. I arrived at the conference room 15 minutes early. The long mahogany table gleamed under the soft lighting. Portraits of former partners lined the walls, all white men in dark suits, their eyes following me as I took my seat near the end of the table. I opened my laptop and reviewed my notes one final time. The room filled gradually. First came Bradley Whitmore III, the grandson of one of the founders. He was 35, with slicked back hair and a perpetual smirk. He had been promoted to senior vice president 2 years ago, despite a track record of mediocre performance. His father sat on the board. Behind him came Derek Sullivan, the head of compliance. Derek was 53, with a red face and a belly that strained against his shirt buttons. He had made his dislike of me clear from my first day. Small comments. Watching me a little too closely. Questioning my reports more than anyone else's. Then came the others. Marcus Webb, a junior analyst who had been with the firm for only 8 months but was already being groomed for management. He was 27, white, and had attended the same prep school as Bradley. There was also Patricia Holden, the head of human resources, a thin woman with sharp eyes who smiled too much and said too little. I nodded to each of them as they entered. Some nodded back. Most did not. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened one final time, and she walked in. I had seen her before, of course. Everyone had. Victoria Ashford was the new CEO, appointed by the board 6 months ago to modernize the firm. She was 34 years old, with blonde hair that fell just past her shoulders and blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She was brilliant. Harvard Law, followed by a decade at Goldman Sachs, followed by a meteoric rise through the ranks of several Fortune 500 companies. She was also beautiful, though she carried herself in a way that made it clear her beauty was the least interesting thing about her. She took her seat at the head of the table without ceremony. Her eyes swept the room, landing briefly on me. I held her gaze for a moment before looking down at my notes. The meeting began. Bradley presented first, a rambling analysis of market trends that said nothing new. Derek followed with a compliance update that was mostly self-congratulation. Marcus gave a brief report on a minor project that had been his only responsibility. Then it was my turn. I stood and connected my laptop to the projector. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting. I had learned to ignore it. I began to speak. I explained the flaw I had discovered, walking them through the data step by step. I showed them the projections, the potential losses, the solutions I had developed. I spoke clearly and confidently. I knew my material. Halfway through, Bradley interrupted. "Sorry, Joseph, but I'm not sure I follow. Can you explain that last part again? In simpler terms, maybe?" There it was. The condescension. The implication that I was the one who lacked clarity, not him. "Of course," I said evenly. I repeated the explanation, using smaller words, watching his smirk widen. "Interesting," he said when I finished. "But I think you might be overcomplicating things. Derek, what do you think? Is this really as serious as Joseph is making it seem?" Derek leaned back in his chair. "Hard to say. Joseph does tend to find problems where there aren't any. Remember that audit last year? He had us all worried over nothing. That audit had revealed a $2 million discrepancy. I had been proven right. But somehow, in their retelling, it had become an overreaction. I have the documentation, I said. The data supports my conclusions. Data can be interpreted many ways, Derek replied. Maybe we should have Marcus take a look. Get a fresh perspective. I felt my jaw tighten. Marcus had been with the firm for 8 months. I had been here for 4 years. But I said nothing. Victoria Ashford had not spoken. She sat at the head of the table watching. Her expression was unreadable. Actually, she said, and the room fell silent. I would like to hear more. Joseph, please continue. I looked at her. There was something in her eyes, not pity, something sharper. Recognition. I continued my presentation. I finished without further interruption. When I was done, I returned to my seat. Bradley spoke immediately. Well, that was thorough. Maybe too thorough. I think we need someone with more leadership experience to oversee this. Someone who can see the big picture. I agree, Derek said. Joseph is a good analyst, but analysis is not leadership. This requires executive oversight. Patricia Holden nodded, her smile fixed. We should consider forming a committee. Joseph could assist, of course, but he might not be ready to lead something of this magnitude. They were taking it from me. Right there, in front of everyone, they were taking my work. I felt the familiar anger rising in my chest, the anger I had learned to suppress long ago. I kept my face neutral. Victoria Ashford stood. The room fell silent again. Thank you all for your input, she said. Her voice was calm, measured. I will take everything under consideration. This meeting is adjourned. She left without another word. The others gathered their things and filed out, some of them glancing at me with expressions I could not read. I sat alone in the empty conference room for a long time. Later that afternoon, I was called to Patricia Holden's office. She sat behind her desk, her smile in place. Joseph, please sit down. I sat. I wanted to talk to you about the meeting this morning, she said. I noticed you seemed upset. I am fine, I said. Good, good. But I have to be honest with you. Some of your colleagues have expressed concerns about your attitude. My attitude? You can come across as defensive, aggressive even. It makes people uncomfortable. I stared at her. I had said almost nothing in that meeting. I had presented my work. I had answered questions calmly. I had not raised my voice. I am not sure I understand, I said. It is just something to be aware of, she said. In this firm, collaboration is key. We are all on the same team. When you challenge people the way you did today, it creates friction. I did not challenge anyone. I presented data. Her smile flickered. Joseph, I am trying to help you. If you want to advance here, you need to be a team player. You need to show that you can work with others without making them feel threatened. Threatened. A black man who speaks clearly is threatening. A black man who knows his worth is aggressive. I understand, I said, because there was nothing else to say. I left her office and returned to my desk. I sat there for a long time, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. At 6 o'clock, most of the office had emptied. I was preparing to leave when I saw her. Victoria Ashford was standing at the window of her corner office, looking out at the city. The lights were on behind her, and she was silhouetted against the glass. She turned and saw me looking. For a moment, our eyes met across the empty floor. Then she nodded once and turned back to the window. I did not know what that nod meant, but something about it stayed with me as I gathered my things and walked out into the cold Chicago night. The weeks that followed were a study in quiet warfare. My presentation was handed over to a leadership committee consisting of Bradley Whitmore, Derek Sullivan, and Marcus Webb. I was invited to attend their meetings as a consultant, which meant I sat in the corner while they discussed my work as if I were not there. They made changes. They removed sections. They watered down my conclusions. They added their names to my reports. And when the revised analysis was presented to the board, my name was nowhere on it. I documented everything. I had learned long ago that in a world designed to silence you, documentation is survival. Every email, every meeting, every comment. I kept meticulous records. I did not know what I would do with them, but I knew that one day they might matter. Meanwhile, I watched. I listened. And I began to see patterns that others had missed. Bradley Whitmore, for all his confidence, was remarkably careless. He left his computer unlocked. He sent sensitive emails to the wrong recipients. He took credit for work he had not done and ignored problems he should have caught. His mistakes were covered by his name, his connections, his father's position on the board. Derek Sullivan was worse. He was lazy, bitter, and deeply incompetent. He spent most of his days in meetings that accomplished nothing, delegating his responsibilities to junior staff and blaming them when things went wrong. He had survived for decades because he knew how to navigate office politics, not because he knew how to do his job. Marcus Webb was simply a vessel. He did what he was told, agreed with whoever was in power, and smiled his way through every interaction. He had no ideas of his own, no convictions, no substance. He was exactly the kind of person this firm rewarded. And then there was Victoria Ashford. I did not understand her at first. She was the CEO, the most powerful person in the building. She could have stopped what was happening to me with a single word. But she said nothing. She watched. She listened. She observed. And then, slowly, I began to notice things. When Bradley interrupted me in meetings, she would ask me to continue. When Derek dismissed my work, she would request the original documents. When Patricia Holden made comments about my attitude, Victoria would change the subject or end the meeting. She never defended me openly. She never confronted anyone directly. But she was there, always there, a silent presence that I could not quite interpret. One evening, I was working late. The office was empty except for the cleaning staff making their rounds. I was reviewing a new set of data when I heard footsteps approaching. Victoria Ashford stopped at my desk. "Mr. Carter," she said, "you work late." "There is a lot to do, Ms. Ashford." She studied me for a moment. "I reviewed your original risk assessment, the one before the committee made their changes." I said nothing. "It was excellent work," she said. "Thorough. Insightful. The kind of analysis this firm needs more of." "Thank you." She paused. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you stay?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that. Not directly. "Because I am good at what I do," I said finally. "Because I have worked too hard to let them push me out. Because leaving would mean they win." She nodded slowly. "I understand that more than you know." She turned to leave, then stopped. "The original report. Do you still have it?" "Yes." "Keep it safe." She walked away before I could respond. The following week, something happened that changed everything. I was called into a meeting with Patricia Holden, Derek Sullivan, and Bradley Whitmore. No agenda was provided. No context was given. When I entered the conference room, I knew immediately that something was wrong. Their faces were hard, their postures rigid. Patricia's smile was nowhere to be seen. "Joseph," Derek began, "we have a serious problem." "What kind of problem?" Bradley leaned forward. "There has been a significant discrepancy discovered in one of our client accounts. Almost $3 million. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Which account?" "The Harrington portfolio. Your portfolio." I stared at him. "That is not possible. I have reviewed every transaction. There is no discrepancy." "The numbers say otherwise," Derek said. "And frankly, Joseph, this is not the first time your work has come under question. My work is impeccable. I have documentation for every decision I have made." "Documentation can be falsified," Patricia said quietly. "We are not accusing you of anything, but we need to investigate." I understood then what was happening. They were setting me up. They were going to blame me for a problem I had not created, a problem that probably did not even exist. And when they were done, I would be finished. "I want to see the evidence," I said. "That is not possible," Derek replied. "The investigation is confidential. You will need to take administrative leave while we sort this out." Administrative leave. Removed from the building. Cut off from my files, my records, my ability to defend myself. "This is not right," I said, "and you know it." Bradley smiled. "Joseph, I understand you are upset, but getting angry is not going to help your case. It only makes you look, well, you know." I knew. Aggressive. Threatening. The angry black man. I stood slowly. "I will need this in writing." "Of course," Patricia said. "Human Resources will send you the formal notice by end of day." I walked out of that room with my head held high. But inside, I was already planning. That night, I received an email. It was from an address I did not recognize. The subject line was empty. The body contained only 2 words. "Fight back." There was an attachment. I opened it. It was a file. Financial records. Meeting notes. Email chains. All of it relating to the Harrington account. And as I read through it, I began to understand. The discrepancy was real, but I had not created it. Bradley Whitmore had. Over the past 18 months, he had been quietly siphoning funds from the account, covering his tracks with falsified reports and redirected transactions. Derek Sullivan had helped him conceal it. And now they were planning to pin everything on me. The file also included something else. Internal communications between Bradley, Derek, and Patricia. Discussions about how to manage the Joseph Carter problem. Comments about my attitude. Jokes about my background. References to my race that made my stomach turn. I sat in my apartment for a long time staring at the screen. Someone had given me everything I needed. Someone with access to files I could never have reached on my own. I thought about Victoria Ashford, her questions, her observations, her silence. "Keep it safe," she had said. I saved the file to 3 separate drives. I printed the most damaging documents, and I began to plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked in secret. I analyzed the data. I traced the transactions. I built a case so airtight that no lawyer in the world could tear it apart. I also did something I had never done before. I reached out to people I had helped over the years. Colleagues who had been mistreated. Assistants who had been overlooked. People who had seen things and said nothing because they were afraid. One by one, they agreed to talk. One by one, they shared their stories. And one by one, the picture became clearer. Bradley Whitmore was not just a thief. He was a predator. He had harassed women, stolen credit from subordinates, and covered his failures with lies. Derek Sullivan had enabled him at every turn, protecting his protege in exchange for power and influence. And Patricia Holden had buried complaints, silenced victims, and maintained the facade of a functional workplace. They had built their careers on the backs of people like me, and they had never been held accountable. Until now. On the 14th day of my administrative leave, I received another email. This one was from Victoria Ashford's official address. "Board meeting scheduled for Friday at 9 a.m. Your attendance is requested." I read those words 3 times. Then I began to prepare. The morning of the board meeting, I put on my best suit, navy blue, tailored, with a white shirt and a burgundy tie. I had bought it 3 years ago for a presentation that was supposed to be my breakthrough moment. That presentation had been reassigned to someone else. I had worn the suit only once since then, to my mother's funeral. Today it felt different. Today it felt like armor. I arrived at the Whitmore and Grayson building at 8:30. The security guard looked at me with surprise. "Mr. Carter, I thought you were on leave." "I was," I said. "I am here for the board meeting." He checked his list. My name was there. He nodded and let me through. The boardroom was on the top floor, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. The table could seat 30. Today, every seat was filled. I recognized most of them. The board members, gray-haired men in expensive suits. The department heads, the legal counsel. Bradley Whitmore was there, sitting near the head of the table with Derek Sullivan beside him. Patricia Holden was in the corner, her tablet in her lap. And at the head of the table sat Victoria Ashford. She looked up when I entered. For a moment our eyes met. And then she nodded almost imperceptibly and gestured to an empty seat near the front. I sat down. The room was silent. Victoria stood. "Thank you all for coming." As you know, we are here to address a serious matter involving potential financial irregularities in one of our major accounts. Bradley shifted in his seat. Derek's face was red. I have asked Mr. Joseph Carter to join us today, Victoria continued, because he is central to this matter, but perhaps not in the way some of you expected. She pressed a button, and a screen descended from the ceiling. A presentation appeared. Over the past 2 weeks, she said, I have conducted a thorough investigation into the Harrington portfolio discrepancy. What I found was deeply disturbing. She clicked to the next slide. Financial records appeared. Transaction histories, dates, amounts. The missing funds were not lost due to negligence or error. They were stolen. Deliberately, systematically, over a period of 18 months. Bradley's face went pale. Derek started to stand. Victoria, I think we should discuss this privately before— Sit down, Mr. Sullivan. He sat. Victoria clicked again. Email chains appeared on the screen. I recognized them. They were from the file I had received. These communications show a coordinated effort to embezzle nearly $3 million from client accounts. The funds were diverted through shell companies and personal accounts. The perpetrators then attempted to frame Mr. Carter for the theft, using fabricated evidence and manufactured complaints about his performance. The room was absolutely silent. I have here, Victoria continued, sworn statements from multiple employees documenting a pattern of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation by the individuals involved. I also have documentation of racial discrimination against Mr. Carter specifically, including derogatory comments, unfair treatment, and deliberate sabotage of his career. She looked directly at Bradley. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to explain why your personal account received 6 deposits totaling $800,000 over the past year? Bradley's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Mr. Sullivan, would you like to explain why you authorized the deletion of 47 emails related to the Harrington account 3 days before Mr. Carter was placed on leave? Derek's face was now purple. This is outrageous. I demand to speak to my attorney. Your attorney has been notified, Victoria said calmly, as has the SEC and the FBI. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had already detonated. Patricia Holden stood suddenly. I had nothing to do with this. I was only following instructions from— Ms. Holden, Victoria interrupted. I have recordings of you coaching Mr. Sullivan on how to document false complaints against Mr. Carter. I have emails showing you suppressed harassment claims against Mr. Whitmore, and I have testimony from 3 former employees describing how you retaliated against them for reporting misconduct. Patricia sat back down heavily. Victoria turned to the board members. Gentlemen, I am recommending the immediate termination of Bradley Whitmore, Derek Sullivan, and Patricia Holden. I am also recommending that this company cooperate fully with federal investigators and pursue civil action to recover the stolen funds. She paused. And I am recommending that Mr. Joseph Carter be promoted to Senior Vice President, with full authority over the Risk Assessment Division and complete exoneration from any allegations made against him. I sat very still. I was not sure I was breathing. One of the board members, an older man named Reynolds, cleared his throat. Ms. Ashford, this is quite a lot to take in. Are you certain about these allegations? I am certain, Victoria said, and I staked my career on it. If I am wrong, I will resign immediately. But I am not wrong. Another board member spoke. The evidence is compelling. I move that we accept Ms. Ashford's recommendations. Seconded, said another. The vote was unanimous. What happened next was a blur. Security escorted Bradley, Derek, and Patricia from the building. Bradley tried to argue, then threaten, then beg. Derek said nothing. Patricia was crying. I watched them go and felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Only a strange, hollow peace. The other employees had gathered in the hallways watching. Some of them looked at me with surprise, others with something that might have been respect. A few came forward to shake my hand. By noon, the story had leaked to the press. By evening, it was national news. The fall of Whitmore and Grayson's inner circle. the black analyst who exposed their corruption, the female CEO who brought them down. I went home that night and sat in my apartment in the dark. I did not turn on the lights. I did not eat. I just sat there thinking about everything that had led to this moment. There was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Victoria Ashford standing in the hallway. She was wearing a simple coat, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired. "May I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She walked into my apartment and looked around. It was small, modestly furnished. Nothing like the world she inhabited. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For what?" "For not acting sooner. For letting it go on as long as it did." I shook my head. "You could not have acted sooner. If you had confronted them directly, they would have covered their tracks. You needed them to feel safe. You needed them to make mistakes." She looked at me. "How did you know?" "Because that is what I would have done." She smiled then, a real smile, the first I had ever seen from her. It transformed her face entirely. "You are remarkable, Joseph Carter. I hope you know that." "I know what I am," I said. "I know what I have always been. The question is whether this company knows it." "They will," she said. "I will make sure of it." We stood there in the dim light, two people who had found each other in the middle of a storm. "Why did you help me?" I asked finally. "You did not know me. You had nothing to gain." "I knew you," she said quietly. "I watched you for months. I saw how you carried yourself, how you never lost your dignity no matter how they treated you, how you kept doing excellent work even when no one acknowledged it. I saw a man of integrity in a place that had forgotten what integrity meant." She paused, and I saw myself. Years ago, before I had power, before I had position, I was dismissed, underestimated, pushed aside, not for the same reasons as you, but I know what it feels like to be invisible in a room full of people. I did not know what to say. "I made a promise to myself," she continued, "that if I ever had the power to change things, I would. When I saw what they were doing to you, I knew I had to act, not just for you, for everyone who had ever been silenced." She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were warm. "You do not have to fight alone anymore, Joseph. You never did." I looked at her hand in mine. I looked at her face, open and honest in a way I had never seen. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we rebuild. We make this company what it should have been from the beginning. We hire the right people and fire the wrong ones. We create something worth believing in." "And us?" She smiled again. "I think we take it slow. One day at a time. We have time." I nodded. "I can do that." She squeezed my hand. "Dinner first. I know a place. Nothing fancy. Just good food and good company." I grabbed my coat. We walked out into the Chicago night together. The city was alive around us, lights glittering against the dark sky. The air was cold, but I did not feel it. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the quiet hope of possibility. The hope that comes when you realize the world can change, that people can change, that you can find connection and meaning in places you never expected. Victoria walked beside me, her shoulder almost touching mine. We did not speak. We did not need to. The restaurant was a small Italian place on a quiet street. We sat across from each other at a corner table and ordered wine. The conversation came easily, naturally, as if we had known each other for years. She told me about her childhood in Minnesota, about her father, a factory worker who never finished high school but read more books than anyone she knew, about her mother, an immigrant from Germany who taught her that strength was not about power, but about perseverance. I told her about growing up on the South Side, about my grandmother who raised me after my parents passed, about the teachers who believed in me when no one else did, about the long road from there to here. We talked until the restaurant closed. Then we walked some more, through empty streets and past darkened storefronts. At the corner near my building, she stopped. "This has been the best night I have had in a very long time," she said. "For me too." She reached up and touched my face, gently, briefly. Good night, Joseph. Good night, Victoria. She turned and walked toward the waiting car. I watched until she was gone. 3 months later, we stood together on the stage of the company's annual gathering. I was senior vice president now, overseeing a division of 40 people, responsible for projects worth hundreds of millions. Victoria introduced me to the crowd. She spoke about integrity, about courage, about the kind of leadership that lifts others up instead of pushing them down. When she finished, she looked at me with something in her eyes that I had come to recognize, something that went beyond professional respect, something that felt like home. Later that night, after the speeches and the handshakes and the congratulations, we found ourselves alone on the rooftop terrace. The city spread out below us, a sea of lights stretching to the horizon. You know, she said, when I first came to this company, I thought it could not be saved. I thought the rot was too deep, the culture too broken. And now? Now I think anything is possible. Because of you. Because of what you showed me. I turned to face her. I did not do anything extraordinary. I just refused to give up. That is extraordinary, Joseph. That is the most extraordinary thing there is. She stepped closer. The space between us narrowed to nothing. I love you, she said. I have been wanting to say that for a while. I took her hands in mine. I love you too. I think I have loved you since that first night you came to my apartment. She laughed, a sound that made everything feel right. We really are taking it slow, are we not? We have time, I said. We have all the time in the world. She kissed me then, under the stars, with the city shining below us. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was not an ending, it was a beginning,